Hey, my name is Barbie Armenta. I'm a wife, mother, life coach, and founder of Brave One. Everyone has a story, and I believe that you can be inspired in your own life by hearing another woman's courageous story. We're here to talk about purpose, identity, divorce, blending families. If you're talking about it, I want to talk about it. We are here to have brave conversations. Welcome to today's episode. We'll be having a conversation with my husband, Richard Armenta. He's an amazing man, husband, father, papa, and the owner of Irwin Roofing. Today, you're going to get a little glimpse into our story that we tell in our book, The Right Combination, Finding Love in Life After Divorce. His story begins in a bit of a dark place, but the good stuff, we'll find that along the way. So let's jump in. So I'm so excited to have you joining me today.
Yeah, well, I am excited to be here. I sound very intriguing, a little bit of dark place.
A little bit of a dark place.
Yeah, a little mystery going on there.
But what would you like this brave community to know about you?
So, I guess, let's start from the beginning, right? Dad was 21 years in the military. I grew up as a military brat, so people like to call it. I love the life myself. It was always intriguing going into the gates of the base, and it's like your own separate world out there, away from the regular world, right? But anyway, I was born in Japan, in Tokyo, Japan. From Japan, my dad was stationed in Minot, North Dakota. From Minot, North Dakota, stationed into Great Falls, Montana. And from Great Falls, Montana, we moved to the big, beautiful state of Texas, which I now call home and have for quite some time. My dad retired out at Lubbock, Texas in 1980. My mom actually still lives in the same house we moved into in 1980, if that's an amazing thing. But so that's a little bit about me. Born and raised Catholic, the youngest of 5 siblings. And that's kind of a beginner spot for me right there.
You know, as a Texan, what we say is you're either from here or you get here as fast as you can.
Got here as fast as I could. That's about what happened.
Worked out great for me. Glad you're here.
Exactly.
So something brought you to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So what brought you here?
Yeah, so Dallas-Fort Worth, what brought me here, man? Well, I had a friend, actually, one of my best friends from Lubbock, Texas. He had moved out to the DFW area, and he was, I guess, I just call him lonely, maybe, because he was like, you need to get out here as fast as you can. He goes, pack up. And I was like, man, dude, I don't have a job. I don't have anything. What do you mean come to DFW? And he goes, you don't need that. Just get out here. So I did. So I was one of those adventurous guys, always been kind of a spontaneous guy. And so that's what I did. I just threw all my clothes in the back of my Chevrolet Chevette, which I like to call my vet, and moved out to DFW, man. Got out here and just started making things happen, started waiting tables at Bennigan's. And from there, the journey just took off.
So I know a little bit about your story. So I know that there was lots of fun to be had at working at Bennigan's at night. Oh, yeah. And also... Is that where you didn't meet? Where did you meet your...
The mystery lady?
The mystery lady. That's what we'll call her. So just tell me a little bit about what life was like here in Dallas.
Yeah, man. So we moved out here in 93. Mark and I moved in together, and he had, met his now wife, Jewel. And so we kind of went our own way. They got their own place. I got my own place. And I like to call that place the Pink Palace. It was all flight attendants, pilots lived there. And so it was a little bit of the wild, wild west for me. I mean, we talk about touching on the dark side. In the part of the book we talk about, in the right combination, finding love in life after divorce. And that was kind of my wild side at that time. And so that's where I met my first wife. We started, like I said, pretty much the majority of everybody that lived in those apartments were flight attendants or pilots one. And so every weekend at the pool was quite a crazy place. So without to say the least, but that's where I met my first wife, Holly, and we started dating. And, it wasn't so long after in that, as I call that wild, wild west, that we were dating. I found that she was actually got pregnant. And so we had this discussion of like, wow, what's next in life?
So you're dating someone She finds out she's pregnant. You were in not really a position at that time that you thought, this is it. I'm ready to settle down.
I wish it was that easy. I know my first thought was, I'm barely responsible enough to take care of myself, much less take care of myself, a wife and a child. But we did. We sat down and had that conversation. I said, hey, look, man, I cannot promise you. And my words to her was, look, I cannot promise you a Cinderella story. I can't do that. But what I can promise you is I will give this 110% of my effort to be the best father, the best dad, and the best husband I could possibly be. And so that's what, after much decision, going back and forth, is this really what we want to do? We finally decided, yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and get married. And so we did. We got married, and it was about that time I thought, man, I probably really need to get my act together. It's like I should probably, and, I talk about, when my dad and we were younger, I was born and raised Catholic. And one thing my dad always did when we were very little, very burnt into my mind, is that he would gather all of us up into one room. So all 5 of us little rugrats got into one room, and you can imagine what that's like, herding cats. But we got in there, and anyway, we'd kneel in front of our beds, and Dad would lead us in prayers, and we'd say our prayers every night. So I've kind of always had that in me, that spot in me, and I went through a stand of young life in high school and stuff, and so I always had that in me. And I thought, man, I really probably need to get my act together. Really probably need, now that I got a child on the way, I should probably maybe go back to church, And so that's what got me really getting back into church, is, that whole moment of like, wow, I probably need to become a little more responsible. So, yeah.
So I know that you found yourself at Fellowship Church in Grapevine, Texas, which ironically, and part of my story, my family also ended up at Fellowship Church in Grapevine, Texas.
Yeah.
Little did we know that our paths would cross later. But so what were those years like for you when being married to Holly, you're trying to get back in church, you're trying to do the right thing? And
So that was it. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, man, this is it. Get into this, get back in church. Let's get this, start walking this thing out. And so that's what we did. And ironically, at that apartment complex one weekend where we were partying around the pools, when I was having this conversation, I should probably really get my act together. And this guy just comes over and says, hey, man, I heard you talking about church. And I was like, yeah. And so he invites us to Fellowship Church, is where we started attending. He's like, where that was the initial kick to, get me there. But anyway, come to find out, this guy lived right below me in my apartment complex. Directly below me. My floor was his ceiling. He invited us to Fellowship Church. And so I went, and who knew that church would change my life? But that's how I found Fellowship Church, and never saw that guy again. The guy moved out. I always say it was like an angel, because he invites me, and we go to church that Sunday, and then the guy moves out, and I never see him again. But I end up going to Fellowship Church. And so, and as I'm trying to, getting my walk on and really trying to walk this thing out, I'm feeling good about the direction I'm going. Not that I'm living a perfect life. It was far from perfect. I still struggled with things, but I was definitely trying my best to be the best person I could be. And so as I'm walking it out and doing that, our marriage wasn't the best. We were, two people who were put together by a circumstance, not that we chose each other, and doing the best we could to make it work, but it just wasn't working. And so as I'm trying to walk this thing out and lean on God, become this better person, my dad passes away in 99. We got married. Actually, Dakota was born in 95. We got married in 96. And then in 99, my dad passes away in February. And then 3 months later, my wife filed for divorce. And since I wasn't very strong in what I was doing, I was kind of like, oh, all right, really? This is it, God? Okay, man, this is it? Really? So now I'm trying to devote my life to you. I'm trying to walk out this faith with you. And then, this is what happens. I get my dad dies, my wife files for divorce. I kind of feel like Job at this moment. Of course, I wouldn't even know who that person was. I just know now, at that time. But that takes place, and I don't like the circumstances of how everything happened. And so I was kind of like, all right, you know what? I don't like this. And I kind of, since I wasn't that strong in my walk with God at that time, I kind of turned my back on him and said, you know what? If that's the case, I can do this my own way. And so that was the beginning of a very dark slide, we'll say.
So what do you feel like was the turning point? Like, what did your life look like when you had Dakota and when you didn't have Dakota? Because this is, now you're divorced, and like most dads, you've got the every other weekend, first, third, and fifth. You got Wednesdays.
What do we call that? The good times dad?
Yeah, right. That's what some say.
The good times dad. Such a horrible name. It's like, what am I supposed to do on the weekends? I have my child. We're gonna have a good time, right?
Yes.
So like I said, I reached that moment where I turned my back on God. Because I was like, really, this is it. This is what I get when I'm trying to surrender to you and walk out with you. And like I said, I was very immature in my walk. And so it was not like that, but that's the way it felt to me. And so when I turned my back on him, I just kind of went back into the things that I was doing, partying and doing all this. But one thing I did for sure, one thing is that I now was attending this church, Fellowship Church, that we started attending while we were married. And I didn't change that. Even though I was living a crazy life, but I still found myself every weekend in church. So the weekends I had Dakota, that's what I did. I calmed everything down. I took her to church on Sunday. I went to church on Sunday, but I found myself in church every weekend. Wasn't just the weekends I had her. Every Sunday I was in church. Whether I was living my life like hell on the outside, I still found myself in church on Sunday morning. Whether I'd slept or not, I was there. And so that's kind of where turning, for me, that's what I did with my daughter. You asked what I did with her on the weekends I had her. That was one thing I made sure that we did that was consistent and always consistent was I had her in church every weekend I had her, but I had myself in church every single Sunday, no matter what happened that weekend.
So you're living great when you have her, and you're living like hell on the other weekends. And so what was a turning point for you? When did a shift happen?
Well, it's kind of a slow slide. You think you'd see it right away. Of course, you probably do, but you're ignoring all the signs, right? But I guess when I started missing rent, I should have probably known something wasn't right. When I got my car repossessed, I probably should have known something wasn't right. Hey, man.
Those are good signs.
Yeah, those are all good signs that everybody else would have probably responded, but I'm just that kind of hard nut to crack sometimes, So I went a little deeper. But yeah, so it was that stuff, right? It was all these signs of, man, things are really struggling. As my brother-in-law said to me once, he goes, Rich, man, he goes, you got this black cloud that just follows you. And I'm like, I know, and I don't know why, but it's really all my own decisions. But I'm like, what's happening to me? And it was my own choices, but yet he could see it, but I couldn't see it as clearly. I was like, what the heck is going on? So it was that, right? It was all those things adding up and all those things coming to accumulation that I thought, man, I can't do this no more. I really can't do this no more. If I had to be really serious, I was probably getting about, I don't know, maybe 3 hours of sleep a night average for the last 3 years of that spot in my life. It's horrible. And so I was like, man, I really need help. I really got to seek some help. And that's what I did. I went online and I started looking I knew what I wanted, right? It wasn't just a treatment center. I knew I wanted it to be a faith-based treatment center. And there was always that thing in me that I knew I needed Christ in my life. And whether I was living like heck or not, I knew I needed that. And so that's what I did. I went online, started searching. I'd like to say I found it, but God has this way of intervening in my life with other people. And the place I originally found was up in upstate New York. And I was dating a girl at the time. I told her, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm checking myself in the faith-based treatment center. It's in New York. And she asked if she could look. And I said, you can do all you want. I said, that's the place I found. And lo and behold, she comes back to me and says, I found a place right here, not that far away, and it's called Eternal Awakenings. And I say that name out loud, Eternal Awakenings, because I want you to get it. Because I think people who walk through that front door, you are ordained to be there. It's not just a place. I mean, God is there. But anyway, so I was amazed that she found it. So she, told me to check it out. I found a phone number. I called and spoke to the owner, Jim Welch, and him and I knew 15 minutes into this conversation, I said, that's it, I'm going. I was signed, sealed, delivered for me. And that's what I did. So that was May of 2003. I checked myself into Eternal Awakenings out in, at the time I was in Lockhart, Texas, but now it is in Gonzales. But when I found it, it was a little white farmhouse. I mean, just down a dirt road, you literally gravel dirt road surrounded by hundreds of acres of maize fields. And so that's all you could see was maize, corn, maize fields around you, and just this little white farmhouse in the middle of all of it. And, but yeah, so that was the beginning of the journey, man.
I know that you've shared with me that when you went there, that you said it was more about getting your life back with Christ versus knowing that thinking it was about the drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. That was exactly what I told Jim's wife, Carla, when we got there. When I got there, as I said, you know what? I don't think I'm so much here. I don't feel like I'm so much here for the drugs as I am to get back what I have lost. And she said, well, what is that? And I said, that's my relationship with Jesus Christ. And she said, well, I think you're in the right spot. And it was absolutely the right spot.
I know that you had incredible encounters with the Lord in that place, and they can read more about that. Mm-hmm. But I want to know what happened when you came out. What was your life like in that first year after getting out?
Yeah, so what took place there, which is supernatural, and like I said, the readers can read about it in our book. Yeah, I came out, it was kind of like this turning point. I walked in one person and I walked out a completely different man. It was no turning back. It was 100% different. And I was like, look, man, I don't party no more. And my biggest thing is when I went into the treatment center, it's one thing I told Carla was, yes, I'm, here for the drug, it was a drug thing, but I also told her, that sex was probably my second drug of choice, 100%. And so that's what I did. I walked out. I don't party no more, and I don't have sex outside of marriage anymore. And I just made that decision, and I was adamant in it, and that's what I started walking out. And so that's what I did. Came out of there May 2003 and started walking this journey out of what this looks like, not to party and not to have sex outside of marriage. And it was not an easy road, man. I'll tell you, it was a little bit of a struggle when you're a player.
So how long after did you start dating?
Man, I didn't date for a long time. Matter of fact, I hung out at my sister and brother-in-law's house a lot. I like to say every day. It wasn't every day, but it felt like it every day. Let's say I hung out at their house so much that she finally said, after a few years of this trying to figure this new life out, she finally said, hey, you should probably go online and get you an online profile, and you need to start dating somebody. She's probably sick of me being around. But so that's what that was, and I don't know what year was that. Probably it was a while. I mean, that was 2003, and it wasn't until I think 2008, 2008 when I decided to put an online profile out there. But it kind of probably took me that long. As I tell people, it was a journey. I think so many people these days get divorced and they get into this new life of what it looks like, and they don't give time to really breathe in that moment. They jump right into the next relationship right off the bat, and they end up carrying all this luggage from one relationship to the next relationship. And what does that look like? And so
I resemble that story.
Yeah. Well, and people, it's like, so, because people might hear and they might think, wow, 2003 to 2008, that's a long time. And it is a long time, but it kind of took that long for me to figure out, who am I? Who am I, Richard Armenta, by myself, nobody else in my life, just my daughter and me. And am I content in being who I am by myself with nobody else pulling on me, stretching me, and that's where I got. And it took that long. It took that long to build my relationship with Christ, and who I am was now new as a Christ follower, but also who I am as myself, as a dad, and no one else in my life. And so I finally reached that point where I was literally content. I didn't need anybody else in my life. But that was about the time Cindy said, I don't need you in my life. I need you to go. My sister's like, I need you to go online and make a profile. So that's what I did.
So I mentioned in last week's episode that I had received an email from Richard and Irving. So your online profile said padlock looking for the right combination.
That was genius, wasn't it?
So genius. Is there something that inspired that?
Yeah, looking for the right combination. That's about it. Actually, it's just a great creative thought. Let's just put it to that.
It was a great creative thought, and it worked.
Yeah.
Because you reached out and said, I have no idea where Aubrey is, but maybe we should meet. I'm like, well, I mean, okay. So yes, you asked me out.
So you're saying I threw the right lure.
It was a little weak, but it worked. Yeah. So you invited me for that Friday night to go to happy hour at someplace in Addison.
Yes. Yeah.
Can't remember the name of it.
Sherlock's
in Addison.
That's right.
And we met, and I was like,
aren't you amazed? I remember the name of the place.
I'm so proud. Yes. So we met, and I was not hopeful because I'd been on some first dates. And so I had plans with friends later, just in case this happy hour thing didn't go well.
And what did I have? You remember what I had?
No.
I had shoes in my car for what?
Oh, I know. I was getting there. I don't get there. Yeah. So we met, and the second I saw you, it was like lightning struck. It took a little longer for you.
Babe, stop it.
But I was like, oh no, I won't be seeing the friends later. And I was like, the way you dressed, you had flip-flops with jeans, and that was the thing for me. I'm like, you were tall, dark, and handsome. You were checking all the boxes. So I don't remember a whole lot of conversation. I just remember looking at you thinking, oh, I hope this is the one that calls again. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So
I
what
felt
were
the
you
same way
thinking?
though. I was walking up, saw you from a distance, like, okay, yeah, all right, this might be a long night. This actually might be a long night. I don't know.
It was good. We had lots of great conversation.
You're wearing a top that reminded me of my sister.
It was the worst.
That's good or bad.
The worst. I wasn't that hopeful. I did not wear my best outfit. But we kept going. So after happy hour, you said, I'm just not ready for the night to end. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
So that's where your shoes in the car came in.
That's
We
right. That's right.
went dancing, and
Right.
thankfully you didn't have to dance in your flip-flops.
That's right. I took the shoes just in case our day didn't work out. I'm still planning to go out dancing.
You're going dancing either way. That is so funny because I've never, ever thought about that until you're
Right.
saying it right now,
Right.
that you had the shoes because you were going either way.
Just in case it didn't work out, we're going
That's
dancing.
awesome. So yeah, went out dancing, and ladies, I'm just here to tell you, he knows how to get around a dance floor.
Well, I am Puerto Rican.
Yes, he's
got a little bit of rhythm in me.
got the hip thing. Not me, not so much. But let's just say he attracts a lot of attention on the dance floor. But that night he was focused on me, which was very fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I could name some songs that we danced to, but they're all so old now. Like apple
Don't wanna
bottom
date
jeans.
yourself. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So then we danced until they closed at 2.
Right.
And
Shut
then
it down.
you invited me for pancakes.
That's right.
Mm.
Who doesn't love to get invited to pancakes at 2 a.m?
Everyone loves to get invited for pancakes. Yeah. So we went to IHOP and we talked until 4 a.m.
Right.
What
Yeah.
do
Quite
you
the
recall?
night. Quite the night. Covered a lot of conversation during that. And then we finished it with setting up a second date.
Yes, we definitely broke all the dating rules because by the end of that night, we had talked about our exes, all the
man.
things you're not supposed to do.
Right.
But worked out. You kissed me goodnight
Right.
in the
Do
parking
you
lot.
remember what I said about your eyes?
What did you say about my eyes? You
So I was
shared.
like staring at your eyes, and I
remember.
was like, man, the color of your eyes are like the grass in the Serengetis.
Smooth, right?
Yeah,
So
it was.
smooth. I liked it. There was pretty much nothing you could do wrong at that point of the night. It had been like the perfect first date. So I never invited people to my house. And my house was like my little safe place, and also so far away, no one wanted to drive there. So I invited you over for dinner the next night. So much so that my next door neighbor, who was also a single mom, came over and goes, "Are you okay? Like, you never have people here."
Right.
Yeah. So what do you recall about that second date?
The second date, right? Well, the long drive is one thing. No, I was kidding.
It was a long drive.
No, it was good. I mean, you made a great meal. We sat, we had dinner together, met your two boys at that time, or no, they weren't there. That's right. They weren't there. That's right. That was different. That was different time. So yeah, so we sat and, we had great dinner. That was awesome. Had great conversation and
sat out on my porch swing, my favorite place on the planet.
Your favorite place on your porch swing, and things started to get a little hot and heavy, I guess.
That wasn't on the porch swing.
No. That was yeah. But that's, but anyway, and I think kind of the wah, 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 wah part of the conversation. Because I was like, hey man, I like you and everything, but I don't have sex outside of marriage. And I know that was a damper on the evening, but
smidge.
Yeah. I mean, right. But look, it's like we're older, we're, been through a divorce. I mean, who thinks like that? It's kind of, everybody has the whole thought of, really? Kind of too late for that, don't you think? So, but that was me. That's, like I said, that's when I walked out of that treatment center. That's who I committed myself to being. No more partying, no more sex outside of marriage. And I'm trying to live this, walk out my faith walk out as best as I possibly can. So
it's the thing that we all say we want until it happens. And then it brings up every insecurity that you have. I know for me, especially over time, that I was like, maybe he's not that interested because you think that's what guys want. Mm-hmm. And you would say to me, isn't this what women want, to be respected?
Right.
And I'm like, yes, but also, and I had even my Christian girlfriends were saying to me, he's just not that into you. Mm. And you're wasting your time. Mm. Y'all are just friends. And then I'm thinking, maybe they're right. That's what they're saying. Maybe they're right. And so what was your experience from your perspective?
From my perspective, well, since I never walked that out before in my life, up until the time I made that decision, I was actually always surprised at how, I guess, how it was not received very well when I told the person, hey, I don't have sex outside of marriage. It's, they're like, what? It's like, it was something I thought, like you said, isn't this what women want? They want to be respected. I was finding more of the opposite, not that they didn't want to be respected, but that's just almost what they expected, is to, this night's going to end this way. I don't know if that sounds good or bad or indifferent, but I was shocked at how many times that was the case. Yes. So for me, it's just like, I got to that point where I'm like, okay, I know this is what women want. I know this is what I want. And I know that if we walk this thing out, it's going to be best in the end for both of us. If I just got to find that right person. And I know women, your friends are saying, he's just not that into you. But I get it, because if you're not trying to walk it out, then you need to, that's what they're going to think. But also, and able to walk this out, you've got to make that decision before you get to that moment. And that's, it's like people want to walk this out, but they haven't intentionally made the decision. It sounds good, but in their mind, they haven't made that decision. So when things get hot and heavy, they find themselves too much into it, and it's too late to back out.
Yeah, while we were on the couch was not the time to make that decision. You had to have made that decision before that moment.
I knew going in.
Yeah. So we dated, let's just tell people up front, we dated for 4 years, and nobody signs up for that. It is a one day at a time process.
Right.
But the first 2 years were the time where I was just figuring this out. And I kept thinking, if God would just work on him, we could speed this thing along. But
Right.
really, God was working on me, because where you shared earlier that you had become content in your life, just you and your daughter, I had not done that. And so I had a day where I was literally middle of the day in my bedroom, and as audibly, like as if God was with me, is how it felt. He said, "Who are you doing this for? Me or him?" And I realized the real question was, if this doesn't work out, what are you going to do next time if the guy wants to? And I knew the answer to that. And I had to get on my knees that day and surrender for myself, because otherwise, if you had changed your mind, I would have too, but from that point forward, I was as committed, and God was able to work on me and show me that I shouldn't have been looking for you to give me my value and make me feel worthy, that God could love me through you, but that wasn't the what I needed to be whole and complete without you.
That contentness.
Yes. And so we got to about 2 years in, and I wasn't content. I was content in my life. I was not content in the relationship with you, because what happened at the 2-year mark? What decision did you make?
Well, I was still, 2 years in, I probably still had a defensive, that sounds horrible, a defensive wall up, but I mean, I was still like in the mode of what it's like for me and my daughter, and I told you, earlier on, it's like, look, I don't want to rush this thing. Because I feel like if you come in between me and what my daughter have, I said, I will resent you and your boys. And I don't want to do that, because if I can't step into this, and love your boys 100% as if they're my own, then what am I doing? And so I was still in that, trying to not figure it out, but I still wasn't in a spot of I'm ready to make this leap forward. So, and that was about that time my lease was up on my apartment. A buddy of mine, Ben, reached out to me. I've been praying about a new place to live. And he said, hey, you ever thought about apartment ministry? And you could have a, place to live, whatever, for free. And we can do a ministry together. And what sounds crazy is, yes, I was in this 2-year relationship, but I also didn't hesitate to tell him, let's do it. I'm all in. And so we signed up, and then I told you, I was like, hey, so I'm doing this 2-year apartment ministry.
Didn't go over as
which
well.
Went over like a lead weight. It's like, but that was a turning point.
It
right?
was. Once you had told me that, and I had very much felt that wall that you had up to that point. And when you made that decision, and you weren't promising me anything at the end of 2 years, I had called my friend Cindy, and she had always told me, God's a redeemer of your time. And she was always on your side and cheering you on. And in that moment, she said, you're right. That's too much.
Right.
And so I was like, whoa, even Cindy agreed with me, then this much, I'm done. I can't do this. So went to your apartment, though, to talk to you about it. And what'd you tell me?
Well, actually, I'd spent the weekend with my brother, and I was sharing with, at that time, his girlfriend, and we were talking about our relationship. And she'd actually asked me if you ever got to see the part of me that she sees, because very relaxed, very outgoing, very laughing, jovial, easy. And I was like, you know what? Probably not.
I saw it, but not with me. I would see you with these other people, and you're, doing all these things. But with me, there was this distance.
There was sort of a wall up, and, wall of protection, I guess you'd call it, say, for me and my daughter, whatever. And not being used to being, with one person. But anyway, so yeah, and I said, you know what? Probably not. And so we came back that weekend, or I came back from that weekend, and you and I met, and you displayed your disgrievances with me about where you were in the relationship. And then I think I surprised you by saying, you know what, you're right. And I don't think I've shown you the best part of me. And so that very intentionally at that moment in time, we sat on the couch and we prayed together, and that was it, man.
There was a visible wall that came down like immediately.
Like you like to tell people, a light switch was flipped.
It was crazy. Just, that's just what God does. And then also your willingness to kind of surrender to that and be vulnerable, because that's really what it is. Being vulnerable and being authentic, which is something I was trying to learn, feels like risk.
Yeah.
And so that's felt risky, I think, for you, but also for me, because I was like, oh, now I've got to actually be all in as well. And so to give you a little bit of abbreviated version over that next year, we just, we were more intentional. In the past, most of our dating played out at a table in a restaurant, because we didn't go to each other's houses. You were super intentional about not even giving the appearance, but me leaving a car or anything. Because at that time, I had also joined Fellowship Church. I had been visiting, and you had been there since the beginning. And so I had joined the church, and we had been asked to lead a singles group together. And we were serving in many areas. And at first that was awkward and we had to find our place. But by the end of that time, we were full on. I ended up on staff. So that's where we were doing life was in that church and in that singles ministry and with a lot of other couples.
Yeah. So when that light switch flipped, as you call it, that's when I think both of us just really intentionally started seeking each other out, serving each other's needs, really inviting the boys into my life, really allowing them
Dakota
to be,
and mine.
And Dakota and yours. And that's where the whole thing kind of started happening, man. And it leads us to where we're at, I mean, look at us. Hey, look at us now, baby.
Look at us now.
Look at us now,
Yeah. So after the second year is when everyone started saying, Richard, when are you going to put a ring on it?
Yeah, I need some cake.
I'm very grateful for your friends that were giving you little nudges along the way.
Sure.
And so what was that like? And then there was also a trip to Galveston.
Right. So, I mean, that was, everybody's kind of pushing me to that moment. I felt like it was coming, but they were really pushing it, and then, and during that time is where we took a, kind of a family, not really a family vacation, I should say, because we weren't a family at the time, but that's where we took our first trip together with the boys and everything, went down to Galveston and enjoyed our time there, with them and with you. And I kind of started seeing our relationship from what it looked like as a family type relationship. And that's where I think I told you on that trip, I said, you know what, I think I could do this. I think I can make this the rest of my life. There's
you
a few
said
things
I had won you over.
You had won me over, dear. That's right. You had won me over. And I think also I just, thought, I could be a dad to these boys or stepdad to these boys, but yeah.
Well, that was an exciting episode and I would love to keep going, but we're going to save a little bit for next week. But Richard, I want to thank you because it's not often that we get to hear a brave conversation with the men in our lives or the husbands in our lives. So I appreciate your being willing to be authentic and vulnerable and share our story. And next week, you don't want to miss the epic proposal. There are some ups and downs, as you might imagine, on blending a family, planning a wedding, and all of that. So we want to share that, of course, the wedding day, and then our blended family journey as we're now 10 years into our relationship. So look forward to sharing next week. Thanks for joining me for today's conversation. If this resonated with you, please save this podcast to your playlist and share it with your friends. If there's a conversation that you want to hear, make sure and reach out at braveone.net and send a topic request. Until our next episode, remember to put your brave on.